Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of 3 Wide. I'm your host, Radney Crawford. We have a lot to go over in today's episode, from Chris Buescher getting his third win of the season at Daytona, Ryan Blaney and Ryan Preece's crashes, the state of safety and superspeedway racing in NASCAR, and also, of course, the 2023 Cup Series playoff grid. So let's dive right in. So before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. If you are looking to upgrade or update your hunting apparel, then hunttoharvest.com is where you need to go. They have a wide selection of shirt designs for many types of hunting as well as fishing, and right now they are having a sale on their long sleeve shirts. So if you're looking to get a head start on your winter collection, then hunttoharvest.com has what you need. They also have some brand new hat designs in, and they are going fast. So head over to hunttoharvest.com and get your order in before it's too late. And when you go to check out, be sure to use the promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY 18923 for even more savings at checkout. And this can all be done at hunttoharvest.com. So Chris Buescher got the race win on Saturday night at Daytona, his third this season, and all three of his wins have come in the last 5 races. So momentum is definitely on Buescher's side as we get ready to start these playoffs. And for his teammate at RFK Racing, Brad Keselowski, he finished in second, giving this team their first 1-2 finish since 2014 at Bristol, when Carl Edwards and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. were able to do it. And Buescher now starts the playoffs 4th in the standings with 21 playoff points, putting him in a prime position to make a deep run at the playoffs. And with his 3 wins, they have come at different styles of tracks like Richmond, Michigan, now Daytona. So the question is, can Buescher be the guy to make a run at the championship that nobody saw coming, especially this quick after Brad Keselowski bought into the team as part owner? So before we dive too deep into the playoff talks, let's focus on this race for just a few minutes. Coming into Saturday's race, many fans, including myself, media members, drivers, were expecting a chaotic race, with this being the regular season finale. Drivers who are needing the win to get in. A lot of people were expecting them to drive over their heads, drive very aggressively, causing huge crashes and multiple cautions. But that just wasn't the case. We only had 3 cautions in this race, including stage breaks. And that was the lowest amount of cautions at Daytona we've had since 2003. In the July race, that was won by Greg Biffle. However, the 2 cautions that were caused by crashes, they were pretty noteworthy and scary themselves. Starting with the end of stage 2, coming out of turn 4, you had Ty Gibbs on the outside, Ryan Blaney on the inside. Ty Gibbs loses control of his car. Looks like not so much of a bad push from Bell, but rather the air between the 2 cars sent Ty Gibbs into Blaney, sending Blaney head on into the outside wall. And you could see on the replay the hard contact, the way that the safer barrier gave, doing its job and the car doing its, allowing Ryan Blaney to climb out of his car and walk away from the accident. But probably the most violent and the worst accident of the night came with just 5 laps to go in the race, with Ryan Preece on the back straightaway, getting spun out, collecting his teammate Chase Briscoe. Then you see Ryan Preece go into a very violent and scary flip. And the scariest thing about this wreck was the fact that the roof hatch came completely off, the window net came free, exposing Preece both up top and from the side. And if any sheet metal or anything like that had penetrated either one of those openings, this wreck could have been much, much worse. And we really haven't seen a car barrel roll like this in quite some time. Probably the most recent that I can think of off the top of my head is Elliott Sadler back in 2003 at Talladega. This wreck was much more similar to the crashes we would see back in the late 80s, early 90s with drivers like Darrell Waltrip, Davey Allison, and Rusty Wallace. And I expect NASCAR to take this car back to their R&D center, look over with a fine-tooth comb, see what adjustments can be made and what they can do to make this car safer. However, anytime NASCAR goes to super speedways nowadays, and especially after we have accidents like this, many go straight to social media to demand changes from NASCAR when it comes to super speedway racing. And some of the ideas that were thrown around on social media that really caught my eye were some fans mentioning limiting the number of trips we take to super speedway races like Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta. Also, you had fans saying that they want to see these tracks, you could see them getting reconfigured to meet more of a Michigan or Auto Club or Kansas style of race. Some of the more extreme opinions were that we should get rid of super speedways altogether. But honestly, those last 2 I mentioned have a 0% chance of happening. These super speedway events are the most watched in NASCAR schedule. They bring the biggest crowds. So pump your brakes there. I don't expect any changes really. And I will just say, when it comes to fans and how they react to these super speedway races that openly state how much they hate them, that they're scared for the driver's safety, they're too dangerous, then we need to look at the schedule as a whole and what other tracks can we take off that have been too dangerous in the history of the sport. We need to take off tracks like Watkins Glen, Atlanta, Texas, Dover, Pocono, Michigan, Richmond, just to name a few. Any track that we have seen flips at, drivers get injured, or careers get cut short need to be taken off the schedule if we're going to follow that model. Also, go ahead and take Bristol off, where for the longest time they had the hardest recorded crash G-force wise with Kyle Petty. And for those of you that are watching that are of the opinion that super speedways are too dangerous to be at, or we need to limit them in any sort of fashion, and you might be saying, well, that's just ridiculous, or you're not understanding what we're saying about how dangerous this is. No, I do understand, but I also understand the dangers of this sport, and they will always be there no matter where these drivers are turning laps at. Now, does that make me barbaric or make me someone who doesn't care about the driver's safety? No, it doesn't. NASCAR has made huge strides over the last 20 years when it comes to safety with these cars and also the tracks. Now, can changes be made? Yes. I can get behind the taking away the grass on the back straightaway of Daytona, or getting rid of the grass at these super speedways. I can get behind that. I think that would reduce the number of flips we see, or at least the barrel rolls and the violent crashes we see, because it just builds up the speed and momentum. It allows these cars to dig in and go through these barrel rolls. I can get behind that argument. But like I said, NASCAR has taken great strides. Have they had issues with this next-gen car and concussions? Absolutely. We have seen Kurt Busch retire over this past weekend due to a concussion he sustained in this next-gen car. There's always room for improvement. There's always work to be done, and NASCAR is aware of that, and we see them continue to work on these things. There's never a point where they can just sit on their hands and say, okay, we got it perfect. They have to stay on top of it. And as we saw with these crashes Saturday night, I guarantee you they will be taking a look at the Preece car and seeing how they can strengthen the roof hatch. How can they avoid the window net falling down again? How can they avoid that issue from happening in future crashes? Now, looking at the playoff standings themselves, the drivers who will be competing for a shot at the championship include drivers like William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, Brad Keselowski, Tyler Reddick, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kevin Harvick, and Bubba Wallace. And when it comes to drivers who I believe are in danger of being among the first four eliminated, I think you have to look at guys like Ricky Stenhouse, Michael McDowell, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, and Tyler Reddick. Harvick, he is right now in that bottom four, but he is one I can see digging himself up out of that hole. He's been consistent all year. He's got better stats than a lot of those that are ahead of them in the playoff standings right now, so I have no problem seeing Harvick going on to the next round. But when it comes to drivers like Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, they have just been too inconsistent this year for me to really consider them a threat, and really even consider them as drivers that can move on to the next round. I think they will be in danger of being eliminated early. Now, Tyler Reddick, he has been better over this past month and a half, but he's been too much of a hot, cold driver this season. That's my greatest concern with him. If he gets into a slump at any of these playoff races, especially say we go to Darlington, it could take him a few races to get back in the swing of things, and there just simply isn't time for that to happen. Now, for Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., they're driving for smaller teams, so they are already facing an uphill battle. And for Ricky, he has had a great year with his 47 car. They've had a tremendous season. He's consistently been in the top 20, the top 15, and even been borderline a top 10 driver. But that is not going to be enough to cut it to go on to the next round, especially when you have drivers ahead of you with the amount of playoff points they do, and even some drivers behind you in the standings that have been more consistent all year long. Now, for Michael McDowell, he hasn't been as consistent as Ricky Stenhouse. Michael has performed at tracks you expect him to. He's come away with the win at Indy. He's done well at super speedways, but he's going to have to step up his game at these other tracks like Darlington, like Bristol, these that are on the first set of 3 races for the first round of the playoffs. So it's just going to be a question of, can he do that? And for Bubba Wallace, I put him right under Kevin Harvick as far as the ability to dig himself out of the hole of the bottom four. This team has had speed. Unfortunately, execution has been their Achilles heel, along with the inability to finish races strong. We have seen this team come out with a lot of speed, running up near the front at the end of the first stage, the second stage. But when we get in that final stretch of the race, this team just seems to fade. They can't get the finish that they really deserve and where they've been running all day. So if this team can clean up their pit stop mistakes, and if they can stay up with the track when it comes to adjustments with the car, I see no problem with this team moving on to the next round and Bubba Wallace having a pretty good debut start in the playoffs. But now there are two things that are always for certain when it comes to the Cup Series playoff. We always have a surprise championship contender. Could it be Chris Buescher? Could it be someone we haven't seen yet? Someone that isn't making waves, that's flying under the radar. And we always have a surprise early exit. And this Sunday at Darlington, we will get our first glimpse at who that driver could be. And that'll wrap up today's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank y'all for joining me and watching along. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you will know when our new videos drop, as well as our weekly fantasy shorts. Also, be sure to head over to hunttoharvest.com. Let them know we sent you. Check out their awesome selection of hunting apparel. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week and enjoys Labor Day weekend, the traditional Southern 500. And we will meet back same time next week and go over all the action that we see from Sunday.